What is up, everyone? I hope you're all doing well. Blizzard sent me an email recently trying to sell me some of their store mounts. And that just ticked all my boxes. So it's time for me to get a little bit passionate about World of Warcraft's most recent casino shitshow excuse of an expansion and the terrible state of the game that is Cosmetics of Mountcraft. BFA was shit at launch, and 8.1 has done nothing, absolutely nothing, to address the core problems with the game. And instead of content, what does Blizzard give the players? Another fucking store mount, with a unique model that they clearly spent some time on. I personally think the mount looks ridiculous and not at all like it belongs in World of Warcraft, more like something they kidnapped from some Japanese anime. The people that buy these fucking mounts are the ones who give Blizzard an excuse to time and time again bend the player base over a barrel and fuck them in the ass with the schlong of microtransactions. The Battle for Dazora lore releases on the 22nd of January, which very conveniently is just over a month after the release of 8.1, just to ensure that if someone was stupid enough to resubscribe for 8.1, Blizzard could get an extra month out of them before they release the raid. Blizzard needs some tough love. The essence of the problems the game has is the core philosophy behind how the game is being designed. Blizzard has obviously evolved as a company along with the rest of the gaming industry since they initially released World of Warcraft, and while no one can really blame them for that, the philosophy behind World of Warcraft also clearly changed. Blizzard has of course been heading down this path for a while, and I am under no illusions that they will keep going in this direction until they have run the game into the fucking ground. People seem to think that Cataclysm was the start of WoW's downfall, but when looking at the mindset that is killing WoW, it really came into play in Wrath of the Lich King, especially the second half of it. I wonder what could have happened in the summer of 2008, some months before the release of Wrath, that would make Blizzard completely change their philosophy for the game. The moment they started angling the game towards accessibility, people left. At the launch of Wrath, which was notorious for having easy dungeons and raids in the beginning because accessibility, you can see the subscription numbers flatlining until the later part of the expansion when Ulduar and ICC was released and Cataclysm was announced. The game basically cut out its own content by introducing features like LFD in Wrath and LFR in Cata. Talk about shooting yourself in the goddamn foot, Blizzard. Making the game accessible doesn't work.
Sounds good, doesn't work.
Because making the game accessible sacrifices the feeling of exclusivity, and exclusivity breeds desire. The game has adapted to the players instead of making the players adapt to the game. Blizzard isn't making the players achieve or holding them to a standard. Instead, they let the players decide their own standard, which of course isn't very high, as people will always take the path of least resistance. And here we have one of the obvious mistakes Blizzard is making, which is appealing to the people in the community that want everything for no investment, as this is earning them nothing. These are not the type of players to invest themselves in anything anyways. These are the players that will baby rage and check out the moment they don't get what they want just by fucking pointing at it, and will go trying to wind their way through some other game instead. When these are the people you are tailoring the rewards of the game around, no wonder you are having problems retaining players. They are absolute children and should be treated as such by Blizzard and by the community as a whole. I know a popular line is that because you paid for the game, you should somehow have access to all of the content. Really? Are you serious? That is the stupidest shit I have heard. You do not buy a single-player game to go straight to fighting the end boss and finishing the story, do you? So why the hell would you expect all the content from World of Warcraft without investing the time? You are paying for the journey, not to go to the destination. You are paying for a chance to progress through the content, not to complete it. If the game is too demanding for you, then go play something else. This is the whole point Blizzard is fucking up. The game should be about the journey. That's the meat of the game right there. Content should be tiered, and not all the content should be for all the players. Rating should be for the best and most dedicated PvEers, heroic dungeons a step below that, normal dungeons below that again, and then at the bottom you have PvP. Like I said, keeping some content exclusive based on investment into the game creates an incentive and a drive to invest time and effort into improving so that you can eventually qualify to do that more exclusive content. Instead, Blizzard gives players access to all the different endgame content without demanding any investment in return, and then throw shit like the 6-month subscription mount at them before they realize how fucking devoid of substance the game is and leave! Some of the players themselves are just as big a part of the problem here in my opinion. Instead of realizing what I've just fucking explained, they instead cry for more easy content that can't be too time consuming, because they have a job, you know, and then therefore Blizzard can't really make content that feels gratifying in the long run, since some players want a medal for absolutely anything they do in the game. And then afterwards, the community sits there and wonder why the game feels unrewarding and boring, and why players are leaving the game in droves. And the way to keep the casual players invested and interested in the game is not by making the higher end content like Mythic and Mythic Plus dungeons, raids, or even heroics accessible by pulling the requirements for those types of content down to a casual level. It's instead to make the content that has now become trivial actually matter. Keep raiding and heroic and mythic dungeons for the more hardcore and invested players. You can't have it all. So a compromise would be to make content like leveling, gold making, normal dungeons, reputations, dailies, etc. viable for progressing your character. This would still make the casual players, at least the unentitled ones, get something out of the game without sacrificing higher level content like raiding and heroic dungeons on the altar of accessibility. This change in philosophy for the game is very, very evident. There used to be server communities. You had a name that mattered, and that you had to build for yourself. You had to evolve and become good as a player to achieve. People might exclaim that, oh no, that's too much like real life, and I'm playing this game because I want a break from real life. No, you don't. Humans are programmed to find satisfaction from being socially, professionally, financially successful, etc. You want to be well liked socially. You want to have a good reputation. You want to be fit and muscular. You want to be good at your job, because in real life, garnering these traits would get you a nice car, a promotion, a hot girlfriend, a nice house, and a big bank account balance. But this obviously requires that you put in the work for it, like becoming pleasant, funny, and charismatic, like working out to build muscle, working a lot to become good at your job, taking care of and maintaining your reputations, etc. All of these require consistent effort over time. In World of Warcraft, you want to be well liked by the people you play with, or by your guild. You want a good reputation on the server. You want to be good at your class, and you want to be knowledgeable about the game, because this will get you invited to raids or dungeons. And instead of a car, it will get you a title. Instead of a girlfriend, it'll get you a nice mount. Instead of a promotion, it will get you a spot on a raiding team. And just like you would work out to build muscle, you would put in effort in the game to earn better gear. Video games takes the same psychology, which direct humans in real life, and imitates it in a video game. It gives you rewards for investing time into it. It dresses it up, but that is the essence of it. The games simply give players a sense of accomplishment, just like doing well in real life would, only at a different scale, obviously. And the better the game is at imitating this feeling of accomplishment found in the real world, the better the games will do at keeping people invested. And with investment comes dedication, and dedication, in turn, encourages continued investment. It's a circle. A circle!
Triangle has like a corner in the end. This one is a circle.
Blizzard has basically become the type of people who want to give all the kids who play in a football tournament a trophy just for participating, and then wonder why no one wants to play football. Fun fact, you know what the kids do with those trophies? They throw them away, because they hold no value for them, because they know they got the trophy for doing something completely trivial and unimpressive. Now isn't that a striking parallel? The game currently seems pulled in two directions: the casual side, which is clearly what the quick to complete undemanding content is aimed at, and then the trying to make it an esports side, which is what the rating and the Mythic Plus is aimed at. This makes the game very top and bottom heavy, with nothing in the middle, and it doesn't help that the content at the top and bottom is the most soulless, minimum effort piece of shit since No Man's Sky, or pretty much all of the Assassin's Creeds made in the past 8 years. Requiescat pace, am I right? Blizzard's attitude towards rewards is completely wrong. During Legion, there was 121 mounts available to obtain. 121 mounts in a 2-year expansion. BFA launched with 42 mounts, and patch 8.1 alone brings 20 plus mounts to the game, but not a fucking iota of actual content.
What the fuck?
So many mounts in the game are ridiculously over the top, and half of them also look so out of place and not at all like they belong in the Warcraft universe. Mounts themselves as a reward is not a bad thing, and a lot of them look great, and you have to credit the art team for their work. But you cannot make the entire reward structure about mounts and cosmetics. They're way too shallow for that. And like with anything else, overexposure will diminish the value of them. People stop finding them special. Blizzard has to make the game about prestige again, not specifically the gear or the appearances, even though that will surely be part of it, but about the prestige behind succeeding in the game. Make it desirable to earn a piece of gear, not for the stats or for the appearance, even though, like I said, that is also a factor, but for the prestige of having acquired that piece of gear. The feeling of reward comes from within each individual player, and it cannot be forced by throwing meaningless rewards like mounts or transmogs at them. Blizzard needs to go deeper. I'm not saying the rewards have to change back to the way it was in vanilla BC, etc., even though that would be a great start. I think the philosophy of how to reward players needs to change back to what it was in the early days of WoW. Blizzard has every opportunity to innovate and come up with some new systems for rewards in the game, and that combined with taking on the early design and reward philosophies for the game is the solution to Blizzard's little player retention problem. It's not really hard to see where Blizzard is putting their effort in creating rewards. Blizzard has started putting an emphasis on rewards like mounts, pets, or cosmetics in general to compensate for the fact that the game lacks any and all feeling of accomplishment. So instead of having demanding, time-consuming content, which gave you a sense of accomplishment, you now have transmog and mounts. This is why I think a lot of people who played the game back in the day, like moi, don't really consider cosmetics or mounts worthwhile rewards. And let's be real, World of Warcraft is no longer an RPG, it is a fucking collection game. I think this explains why the game feels so shallow and not at all worth it. And not just for me. Every single person that I consider a friend that has played World of Warcraft at some point has quit the game. Some started in vanilla, some started in BC, some in Wrath, some in Kata, and even some in Mr. Pandaria. They all have the same issues with the game. It's shallow, it's stale, it's just cosmetics, it's unrewarding, there's no community, etc., etc. I can go on for fucking ever. And these are the people that loved the game, and that would pull all-nighters with me on the weekends to play World of Warcraft back in the day. They have all completely lost interest. And the story, oh my god, this story! I don't know if I even want to think about it. Seeing what has become of the World of Warcraft story breaks my fucking heart. It's absolute trash. I mean, like, The Last Jedi trash. It's a fucking tragedy. And what happened to great timeless stories like Illidan and Arthas? And I don't think Blizzard needs to rehash old stories to make WoW good, but we go from Arthas to fucking spaceships and time travel? The story now consists of scripted story quests and cinematics or cutscenes that give you all the story right there. Again, demanding nothing from the players. See a theme here? 'Cause I fucking do. There is a line in cinema: show, don't tell. Make the audience draw their own conclusions. You used to have to read quests. And yes, you had some cutscenes here and there, but they were mostly aimed at the climax of the story, not the building of it. The rest, the players had to piece together from doing the content. Remember that? Content? The story is straight up lazy and uninspired. The game, and more specifically, the expansion, needs a villain. A full-on villain from start to stop with an entire story behind them that the players can explore and learn during the expansion. Someone the players can invest themselves in fighting. Like in Arthas, or at least in part in Illidan. Arthas was the best done villain of the game. Yes, it's a cliche story, but he had personality and character. He had a huge backstory. Instead, we get the Shah, Gul'dan, and the Burning Legion all fucking over again. I am so fucking done with demons at this point. I swear I have demon fatigue. The magic of the game was that you were a nobody. You were nothing when you started.
You are nothing!
And you worked your way up to becoming a champion of the Horde or of the Alliance. That was pretty much it. Now you are the savior of all things, the chosen one, the speaker of the Horde, the one saving the world. Again, that shit gets really tiresome. Games have told that story for decades. World of Warcraft used to not put you up as the one and only. You were one of many, scrambling together to defeat the bad guys. Blizzard is now handing out gear as if they had gear Tourette's, and have completely devalued gear as a reward. In vanilla, raid bosses drop 2 to 3 pieces of gear for 40 people. That gear was special. It was a hell of a reward. Epic gear was epic. Getting gear was a big deal, instead of getting bukkakied on with gear in retail. The gear itself has also become so streamlined, gear no longer has any unique traits like chance on hit or specific class-related abilities. They even removed tier sets, for God's sakes. Can you name any regular piece of gear you have in the stats it features and how you got it? They have turned gearing into a soulless slot machine that gives you nothing memorable or unique. Gear is now just your item level, nothing less, nothing more. I mean, one of the main ways of receiving gear, the mythic caches and PvP caches, are basically loot boxes that give you a completely random piece of gear regardless of whether you need it or want it. Players don't have to improve their skill level at all to access content, and even for higher content, they can get into it as long as they have the fucking eye level. They don't have to join a guild, they don't have to prove themselves at all. A player's power is boiled down to a fucking number. You used to be able to map out the gear you wanted or needed for your character, or make a BIS list. This made players point out their own goals and milestones in the process of gearing up. This gave you smaller goals you could continuously work towards and achieve. Other goals related to gear could be hitting expertise cap or hit cap. Remember that? I had no idea how much I would miss hit until right now. It wasn't terribly exciting to work on your hit cap, but fuck me did it feel good to get hit capped, and just to know that now you would never miss with an ability. That made you feel like you were progressing and becoming more powerful, little by little. Systems now are designed around you just logging in every day. Daily rewards, Azerite grind, world quest, dungeons, the goddamn mission table, which should be obliterated, and they all feel like a chore. Azerite traits are boring and generic and apparently a balancing nightmare. The Heart of Azeroth is just a plain compulsory grind. Reputations are all the same and you do them all in the same damn way. They don't provide anything of use, a few pieces of gear that's obsolete within the first 2 weeks. They do let you qualify for flying though, which lets you blast through the little content there is to do in the game even faster. And guess what else they give you? For 10 points, that's right, more mounts. Every bit of content they've introduced this expansion has been largely hated by the community, and for good reason. Warfronts is the most pathetic piece of content I have ever seen make its way into the world of Warcraft. And the icing on the cake is that it guarantees you gear. And you can't lose! By the way, have you noticed that the so-called content that is being developed by Blizzard is mostly instanced? PvP is instanced, raiding is instanced, Dungeons and Mythic Plus are instanced, islands are instanced, Warfronts are, you guessed it, instanced. Now, I do not mind the game using instances for some of the content, like raids for example, but all of it? Doesn't seem very MMO, does it? Especially not very fitting for a game that calls itself the World of Warcraft. And what does the incredible waste of time that is AFK fronts come with? You guessed it, fucking mounts. Island invasions are ridiculously boring. I have absolutely no goddamn clue how someone at Blizzard decided that, this is a great idea. Wow, brilliant. Islands. Even better, let's make it a pretty much mandatory for people to keep their necklaces up to date. I'm sure the players will love that.
You fucking idiot!
It comes down to AoEing mobs in packs for Azerite. Azerite. That's what it gives you. You know what else it gives you? More fucking mounts. They are intentionally making the game more about you and only you instead of about playing on the dynamics of the community. And they are twisting the game systems inwards towards the player instead of outwards towards the community. Like LFR and LFD before it, which removed having to use the community to find players to do content with, they have made the community aspect of the game utterly obsolete. Another example of this is the Master Loot change, where they removed Master Loot and instead implemented Personal Loot for all aspects of the game. It's like they want players sitting in their own little box, queuing up in some fucking group finder, being part of the community of the server, and the guild that you played with, and building your character with them. That was the game, man. That was the game. The allied races are a neat idea, but again, they're just cosmetics. They don't do anything unique of significance, just like all the other races in the game at this fucking point. They are just another cosmetic for Blizzard to use as an excuse for real content and real rewards. Races used to, and should have, significant traits that make them differ from each other. How, for example, trolls had extra bow skill back in the day, making them great hunters. Humans used to have greater stealth detection, and increased expertise with dagger and swords, making them great rogues. The races as well as the classes need to stand out more. The classes are too simple. They are no longer unique. The classes all feel the goddamn same. Mana is pretty much trivial and has no real effect on gameplay besides for healers. The classes no longer have uniquenesses that make them stand out. And everyone has ults now. That should speak to the lack of content in the game. People lack interest and don't feel invested and connected to their main characters, so they make ults in an attempt to fix this. Obviously, it doesn't fix the problem, it only postpones it. Look at Vanilla WoW. Players would get very invested in the one or few characters they had, and it made them garner a sort of pride for their character. Same as with faction pride on PvP realms, as you were tied to making characters on only one faction. And leveling used to actually be part of the game. Now it's all heirlooms and experience boosts. Or guess what? You can simply buy your way to the newest expansion. How are players supposed to feel invested in their character from that? It took me over a month to hit my first max level character when I started playing. I still have that character. I love that guy. And even though I haven't mained him since Cataclysm, he is still what I consider my main character. What all my frustration comes down to is that I know, like many others, that they can do so much better. So much better. Blizzard themselves know that they can do better. They knew this back in 2005, for fuck's sake. Go watch some of the old design philosophy panels from the early BlizzCons, and you'll see what I mean.
We also have to give players something to aspire to. There's a lot to be said for that moment when you're sitting in Orgrimmar as a newbie and somebody runs through in like all raid gear and you're like, wow, that guy must be so powerful. Or eBay or something.
And it's not that they can't. They do not want to, at least not the leadership. I think placing the blame on individual developers is a bit off, as they do not really have any say on the direction of the game. But the leadership and heads of development, on the other hand, they're fair game. It's very easy to see why World of Warcraft grew so much in the beginning. It was the game's philosophy, and the moment that changed, the game started dying. But hey, at least we got Classic.